The parliamentary elections cannot come fast enough. Insanity after insanity goes through the French National Assembly to the point that me calling France a failed state is a compliment. Socialist hellhole mental asylum would be a much better description, especially when describing the National Assembly. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. There comes a time when elections are absolutely vital and are basically the turning point between going full failed state or at least getting another shot at being at least a semi-functional country. Such will be the case with the next parliamentary elections in France, which, if not won by the Republicans, will cement the irreversible road towards full socialist insanity of the country. Things are very bad as they are already, but another 5 years of this insanity may prove to be the final nail in the coffin. Now let's read the news and then I'll explain further. So, coming from Digital Europe, French parliamentarians approved a YouTube tax. And goes like this, quote, French parliamentarians have approved an amendment to the country's budget that is intended to see the advertising revenues of free online video services such as YouTube taxed for the first time. Despite opposition from the government, which rejected the tax during discussions on its budget for 2017 a month ago, the country's National Assembly has approved the so-called YouTube tax, which will be imposed on websites posting free or paid-for videos that are accessible in France. The proposed tax envisages a 2% levy on advertising from online videos, rising to 10% when advertising receipts are linked to works deemed pornographic or violent. Now here's left-wing puritanism for you. Online services focusing on news, where video is a secondary activity, will be exempting. That is to say, the meaningless French platforms are exempted. The glorious, always non-French platforms will be fucked. Anyway, the controversial tax is intended to create a level playing field between free and pay platforms and between French and international players. Currently, works distributed via pay TV platforms or pay VOD services are taxed to help finance content creation in the country, while works distributed on free platforms are not taxed. The tax has been criticized as difficult to enforce and likely to deliver negligible revenues. Budget Secretary of State Christian Eckert is on record as saying that it will deliver only about €1 million and fails to address the more important issue of the aggressive tax avoidance strategies of global internet companies. Internet industry group, the Association des Services Internet Communautaires, which is a nod to France's homegrown YouTube rival, refers to the proposal as the Daily Motion tax, also slammed the plan. ASIC said that the measure was discriminatory because the companies affected already contributed to content creation through licensing and revenue share agreements and argued that it sent a very negative signal about the attractiveness of France as a place to do business. ASIC claimed that the misplaced arguments in favor of the tax had been promoted by the Centre National du Cinéma et de l'Image Animée, the CNC, which is charged with dispensing money received from taxation dedicated to supporting content creation. Rights-collecting society, the Société des auteurs et compositeurs dramatiques, on the other hand, welcomed the National Assembly's vote. The SACD said that the proposed tax would contribute to the modernization of the financing of content creation and ensure equality of treatment between platforms. The organization urged the French upper house, the Senate, to endorse the move. Now, don't you love the leftist argument? Yeah, we're gonna create a level playing field by making everyone as miserable as we are. Also, the modernization argument always cracks me up. It's not, however, in no way, shape or form, a modernization move to drag everyone down to your miserable low level. Nor is it modernization to steal even more from those who dare to exist outside of your rigid, coercive and inefficient socialist structures. On the contrary, it's archaization, if I am allowed such a word. It is going backwards to pre-modern times, more precisely to the feudal period, though many would argue quite convincingly that the feudal period was freer than modern-day France. And they wouldn't be entirely wrong. After all, no feudal king or leader dared to levy a 75% tax, nor did they dare to dream about taxing local independent theater plays, which were, in a way, the 15th century equivalent of a YouTube video. Now, mind you, this is not the first excess of this absolutely insane socialist period. If you remember, last year we commented the racking up of taxes, which to some individuals it meant an increase of 15,000%, or the incredibly dumb proposal of forcing landlords to sign contracts with tenants that both the tenant and the landlord know full well in advance that the tenant has no way imaginable of actually honoring it. Of course, The Guardian lauded the initiative, but the economic illiteracy and the downright economic autism of the measure was so high that even many lifelong socialists had to eventually say no on it. Nevertheless, these kinds of economic policies must be made obsolete. And at least under François Fillon governance and the Republican Parliament, there is a mild chance of actually seeing that happening. All the other parties, including Front National, are absolutely autistic when it comes to the economy. And when it comes to France, the dicton, "It's the economy, stupid," actually does fully apply. The overwhelming majority of economic policies in France need to be abolished. Not debated, not amended, not reformed, but abolished outright, preferably with a constitutional ban for ever attempting to reintroduce them. That is, if France still wants to exist 15 or 20 years from now with the same map and with a comparable standard of living. If that doesn't happen, the economy of France will resemble the one in Belarus and not Germany or Poland. With the notable mention that Belarus doesn't pretend to be a civilized place. Its leaders still casually refer to their own country as a Soviet Socialist Republic, even though that name was officially dropped not so long ago. Now, on a more specific note, France has a very peculiar way of treating its culture. Whilst most governments of Europe either leave the culture alone or try to help it, and of course most of the time they fail at that, but France goes one step further and tries to apply the poisonous doctrine of dirigisme to culture as well, through a very complicated system of incentives and subsidies meant to guide the culture into the direction desired by the government, especially in the movie industry. Now, needless to say, this system ensured that the quality of French movies dropped constantly and significantly over the last few decades. Where are the modern-day Louis de Funès comedies? They're nowhere to be found, because French comedian actors now work for Hollywood, because there's no way they could stand a chance to do their own thing in France. Les Visiteurs with Jean Reno was amongst the last good French movies, and that was way back in 1993. Its second part, made in 2001, also starring Jean Reno, had to be made in America because the endless net of regulations made it expensive and hard to make it in France. My point is that you can't guide culture by taxing it or by subsidizing it on conditions that basically ruin the concept of artistic freedom, or by taxing it selectively. I mean, you can, but not as long as you pretend to be a free country. In a socialist dictatorship, that I just happen to know, such thing can indeed be done, and the product is almost always absolute crap. The culture, whilst indeed being an industry, cannot be scaled up and down so easily, let alone guided by bureaucrats through regulations. I mean, come on chaps, it's not steel production, it's something a lot more complicated. Bloody idiots. Anyway, that's all I had to say on this. On the slim chance that a French lefty watches this video, please look into your own tradition, for crying out loud. The French left used to be one of the most pro-artistic freedom of all leftist movements in the world. What the hell? Grow up! And with all of that being said, thank you for watching, thank you for your continuous support, and I'll see you around on Freedom Alternative.